finance executive, where you saw something and you were able to respond to it or point the your team or the organization in a different direction, avoid a risk, pursue an opportunity? Don't know. Anything come to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Yeah, I think I'd probably think back to my time at Aircom over in Dublin. So I mentioned at the outset, I went over there for a few months, and I ended up there for 4.5 years, I think. But that was a time for me where I moved back. I went over there in an operational role. I was effectively going over to help them drive the performance of their mobile division, which had been performing really poorly. I did that for about 6 months, and I think that those sort of operational roles, you need to live in your market and really know your customers. And I was still living in the UK and flying over each week, so I was planning to leave. And the CFO, who I knew pretty well at that point, asked me to consider becoming corporate finance director, and that would be responsible for investor relations, treasury, M&A, managing our debt, running the capex committee, all things I'd never done before. I hadn't even worked in finance for the previous 8 years. And I think that next period of 18 months or so, I got such great experience. We had a $2.3 billion debt facility, which we did an amend and extend on. We raised a 350 million euro bond. We did a big M&A project. I was in the European Commission, defending our position, following some market consolidation, delivering investor presentations, and so on. And I think my reflection off the back of all of that, and this was only at that point midway through my tenure out in Ireland, really, was just, for me, was just how much being out of your comfort zone broadens your comfort zone. Since that couple of years, not much has really fazed me, because so much happened. But also just the breadth of things that finance can really drive, and the decisions that get made or that wouldn't get made without the right analysis underpinning it. Whether that was, we were rolling out fibre across Ireland, and we were rolling out a 4G network, and we were trying to launch our 4G network before our competitors launched theirs and be first to market. We had all of these competing priorities, for example, and a couple of really good pieces of analysis in the finance team ended up, then when we got to the board discussions, really driving the decision about where that capex went and whether we were ready for a rebrand, and whether we were, how close were we to being able to run a sale process and maybe look at an IPO. So I think, that was a period for me where I saw finance. I got a load of experience of meeting investors and seeing finance from a different angle. Some of our larger investors were hedge funds who operated in a really different way to some of the other shareholders. So seeing all of those dynamics, but I guess that piece of just standing back and thinking, wow, those things that happened in the finance team and the ability of the finance team, and it wasn't always success. Sometimes we didn't get things right as well, but just seeing how much difference that can make across the business, but also to the really strategic decisions that the board was making. And, I was really lucky that I had a great CEO and a CFO who were totally different types of leaders to me. They were 20 years more experienced than me. And I just learned so much from them. And we had a really ambitious board. And it just meant that so much could happen in a short space of time. So that was a real moment where I sort of took stock and just realized the breadth it takes to be a CFO, but also just the difference that things in finance can make. And I guess that's why I always come back to that line of sight. The people working on that fiber rollout business case, they could sit and fiddle with spreadsheets for months, or they could really get the bit between their teeth and realize that they were about to drive the biggest decision we were going to make in the business that year. So yeah, I think probably I think the other thing I came away from that with, which was helpful for me, given my background, spending a lot of time outside of finance, is that was my first exposure to lots of we had 90 odd shareholders. We did things that needed 100% consent across all of them. So there was a lot of meeting different types of investors and seeing how far they looked beyond the numbers and that they didn't just care about financials. We had one investor that he wanted to fly over to Ireland, not just to meet management to get out, but to get out to one of our data centers and actually see it for himself, see how it works, to get together with some of the network engineers and see how you splice fiber, to just understand, like, we're putting 100 million euros towards this over the next year. How does it actually work? And I think that, that really gave me confidence, I guess, as someone who was still thinking, I spent so long outside of finance, how's this going to work, talking to investors, that actually you can be a different type of leader and still be really effective talking to investors and talking to the financial community and dealing with the investment banks and all of those sorts of things.